On Thursday, March 23rd, 2023, I received an email message from the Washington Post. I get these every now and then. I don't know why. It says that there's a place to sign up, but I've never signed up. I get them anyway. Anyway, this one is, the subject line is Climate Coach. I agree, IPCC. We're not doomed. And it's from the Climate Coach, Michael J. Koren. And the subhead for the title of each one of these articles from the Climate Coach is Climate Coach, and then the subhead, down-to-earth advice for life on our changing planet. Meaning, of course, your life and mine, not those, the people at the Washington Post. Okay, this week we learned, I'm going to quote directly from the article. I'm sorry, it's boring. I'll also include a link to the article at guymcpherson.com upon release of this video. This week we learned from the latest UN climate report we're likely to burn through the planet's remaining climate budget by 2030. Well, I would argue that we've already burned through the world's climate budget, but since we're already beyond 2C, above the 1750 baseline. Anyway, sounds hopeless, but it's not. Climate change is not a choice between apocalypse or paradise. Every fraction of a degree matters. Every fraction is worth fighting for. Even as the best case scenario slips through our fingers, the worst case scenarios are off the table because of the decline of coal, the rise of renewables, the spread of electric vehicles. Now that's a stunning statement. Apparently, somebody is not familiar with the idea that civilization is a heat engine, based on at least 5 papers from Professor Timothy Garrett at the University of Utah. The first of those papers came out in February 2011. It's been a while. Somebody should be paying attention and noticing that civilization is a heat engine. So, the decline of coal, the rise of renewables, and the spread of electric vehicles, that doesn't mean diddly squat, pardon the expression. He goes on. I'd venture to say our attitudes will decide our choices. As at the end of last year, the share of the U.S. population alarmed about climate change stood at 26%. Okay, that's a stunning figure right there. 26% of people are alarmed. That means 74% of the people in this country aren't paying any attention whatsoever to the most important phenomenon in the history of our species, that which is driving the end of our species. Doesn't sound like a, oh, here we go. Then he says, this 26% who are alarmed in the United States about climate change, that's compared to 12% in 2012. So 11 years ago, there were 12% alarmed, and now there's 26% alarmed. Doesn't sound like a lot. I gotta agree with him on this one. It doesn't sound like a lot. But as I said in my first column, with a link, of course, human culture and global warming are not linear systems. They are driven by exponential curves, social contagions, and threshold effects. Yes, the exponential function is really important here, and you're completely missing out on it. We have passed the 2C threshold, according to Andrew Y. Glickson in his book, The Event Horizon. That's from the abstract of Chapter 5. You can easily find it online. University of Pennsylvania researchers found that when placing about 200 people in randomized groups, a minority committed to changing views could abruptly shift the majority's opinion when they reached 25% of the population. And after all, here we are at 26%, so we got this. In one trial, reports the university, a single person accounted for the difference between success and failure. One more reason to act. One more reason for us to act, not for the billionaires. He goes on. Each generation is being born into an ever warmer world. That's right. The graphic from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change below uses climate stripes to show how different generations will experience global warming in the 21st century. And it's ugly, as you might imagine. But projecting out through this century seems a little misleading to me. A 70-year-old today has experienced 0.85 degrees of warming in their lifetime, writes the Washington Post's Kasha Patel. No, it's more than that. According to an informed scientist, one Andrew Y. Glickson in his book, The Event Horizon. And you can easily find the abstract for his chapter 5 online. It's great stuff. Someone born in 2020 will experience about 3 times higher decadal warming rates by the time they are 70. Someone born in 2020 will not make it until they're in their 70s. I guarantee this. I'm not happy about it, but there is no way anybody paying attention could imagine that we're going to make it to the year 2100. This is just nonsense. All right, and that's enough from the Washington Post's climate coach. Let's move on now. Later that same day, I received an email message, also from the Washington Post. This one was not targeted at many people as the other one was. It's targeted specifically at me. And the subject line is "Heads Up from WaPo." Here's the message itself. "Hi, Guy. My name is Shannon Osaka," because I couldn't tell that from the message that says Osaka Shannon with a comma in there. "And I'm a climate reporter for the Washington Post. I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'm writing a piece for the Washington Post about people who believe the climate crisis is past the point of no return and that human extinction is imminent. I will be mentioning some of your predictions for near-term human extinction, as well as some of the scientists who have disagreed with such predictions." Yeah. You can find a lot more of the latter, people who disagree with me, than you can find of my predictions, but I'm sure she'll manage to dig up every single incorrect prediction I've ever made. I'm sure that this reporter will find everybody who has disagreed with me and find every prediction I've made that turned out to be incorrect. That's the job of this person. He or she goes on, "If you would like to add any statements or comments, please feel free to respond to this email." Hello, yes I will. And I'm not going to include my entire email response back to her because it's really, really long. But here's how it starts, and I'll give you a gist of the idea, and then I will include the entire thing again at guymcpherson.com upon release of this video. "Thank you for the opportunity to respond in advance to your article. With this email message, I point out a few details in support of my prediction of near-term human extinction. There is much more evidence rooted in the peer-reviewed literature in this short essay intended for interviewers, should you be interested." And the short essay is the one that is on the front page of each of my posts, called "Relevant Information for Interviewers," or something like that. And then I point out that even the IPCC says in 2 separate reports that we are in the midst of abrupt, irreversible climate change. The IPCC's October 8th, 2018 report, Global Warming of 1.5 Degrees, concluded that the Earth is in the midst of the most rapid change in planetary history. The most rapid change in planet. So you can't blame this on me. This is the incredibly scientifically conservative and politically conservative IPCC. The IPCC also admitted to the irreversibility of climate change in a separate report, this one published September 24, 2019, and called Special Report on the Ocean and Cryosphere and a Changing Climate. Thus, the IPCC has concluded that climate change is abrupt, more abrupt than at any other point in planetary history, and also irreversible. This is not me. This is the IPCC reporting these things in October 2018 and September 2019, respectively. I also point out that civilization is a heat engine and point to the peer-reviewed papers by Tim Garrett at the University of Utah, pointing out the same. I indicate that I stopped receiving paychecks when I realized that it was the monetary system driving us to extinction. Once I realized that, I didn't feel like I had a choice from a moral perspective. I had to opt out of the monetary system. Man, was that ever expensive. I stopped living off-grid after living off-grid for more than a decade when I learned about the aerosol masking effect and realizing that many people, if many people joined me, it would drive our loss of habitat and therefore our extinction very, very quickly. I point out that E.O. Wilson indicated in his 1992 book, The Diversity of Life, that we were already in the midst of a mass extinction event. That's more than 30 years ago. I point out that mammals invertebrates, of which we fell into both categories, are not keeping up with the rate of environmental change already going on. I point to all kinds of other information indicating that there's no way big, soft organisms like us are going to survive this event. And then I also include, I probably need not point out that I erred previously with respect to human extinction, as you will undoubtedly indicate in your forthcoming article. Yeah, undoubtedly. I quoted from the scientifically conservative 2012 issue of Annual Review of Earth and Planetary Sciences, in concluding that the loss of Arctic sea ice will lead to loss of habitat and therefore extinction of our species. The paper was titled The Future of Arctic Sea Ice, and I include a link to it. It projected an ice-free Arctic Ocean in 2016, plus or minus 3 years. I believe my prediction referred to 2018 as the final year for Homo sapiens. And since then, of course, we've had papers come out in 2020 in the peer-reviewed journal Science by Mark C. Urban, indicating that loss of Arctic sea ice will drive our extinction. The article is called Life Without Ice, and it indicates that it will lead to loss of habitat, the most rapid change in planetary history, because the rapidity of change will cause our extinction. Now, he says this is about 3 decades away. Meanwhile, Professors Jennifer McKinnon at University of California, San Diego, and the Scripps Institute, and also Professor James Anderson at Harvard University, have indicated that this is the year we're going to have an ice-free Arctic Ocean, with full effects to be realized next year. In other words, what that means is the equivalent of 1 trillion tons of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere all at once. Add on the fact that we are breaking out of a triple dip La Nina and headed into a El Nino Southern Oscillation period, which is further going to warm the planet. You add that to the loss of Arctic ice, almost certainly including this year. We'll know in early April for sure. And it looks like, in fact, we're doomed. And this is not something that I want to happen. I keep saying this over and over again. People accuse me every day of wanting this good to go extinct so that I can be proven right. Trust me, my ego is not that big. After all, at the edge of extinction, only love remains. So here we are, same day, same station. But, in fact, minutes after we finished the last video, which is the first part of this video, which is getting kind of long, I realize. Minutes after we finished, I sit down, look at my phone, and sure enough, the paper has been published in the Washington Post. The paper in question has been published. And so I sent the writer a follow-up email message, Shannon Osaka. I know you had a deadline. As a result, you did not have time to read the information I sent you. She couldn't have read the information I sent her. There wasn't enough time. I did not expect your ageist comment, though. Given your employer, I'm not surprised. Sadly, Professor McPherson. She made an ageist comment about me. She looks like she's 20 years old in her photograph, but she makes an ageist comment. Listen, I still got all my hair. Look at this. And it's all mine. It's not a toupee, regardless of what you idiots out there seem to think. In any event, the article, which I will include at guymcpherson.com, is called Why Climate Doomers Are Replacing Climate Deniers. I don't know why doomers and deniers are in quotes, but there you have it. And it's interesting because it goes on to write negatively about people who have concluded that climate change is abrupt and irreversible. Guess who also concluded that, by the way? Oh, that's right, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, with 2 separate reports. One in October 2018 and the other in September 2019, concluding that climate change was abrupt and irreversible, respectively. Nobody's chasing after the IPCC, are they? Nobody's accusing them of being idiots because they report that climate change is abrupt and irreversible. This should be the story that's in the news every day in the Washington Post and every other newspaper in the world, because this is really important, that climate change is abrupt and irreversible. That can influence how we act in response. But it won't. Of course it won't. Oh, at the edge of extinction, only love remains. But I'm starting to lose it for the Washington Post.